All right, hello and welcome to this build guide for the Rain of Fire Meteor Sorcerer. This is my first build guide or video in general in quite some time, and I apologize for that. I found myself a little bit too busy to make videos despite my desire to do so between grad school and deciding to play classic World of Warcraft. Something had to give, and videos unfortunately weren't being made. But since then, I have now quit Classic World of Warcraft and have been pretty committed to just playing ARPGs for the most part, last Epoch especially. So hopefully videos will be coming more regularly again now that I have the time to do so. All right, let's get into this build. This is, of course, one of my favorite builds because I'm making a guide on it. If you don't know, if you haven't watched my previous videos, I only make videos on builds that I consider to be endgame viable. And by endgame viable, I mean it is able to clear over 100 arenas and over 50 monoliths at a higher level. So again, by higher level, I mean something around 70 plus, usually preferably 80 plus, although this particular one is only 72, but it's clear that this can do the job. It's only going to get stronger as it goes. Its scaling is very good. So this build is a lot of fun because of the way that it actually plays. You can basically fill the entire screen with meteors, and it does a lot of DPS, like a whole lot of DPS. You fill the screen with meteors. The meteors tend to crit, and crits tend to be 7 to 10k. Each click of the meteor button drops, I believe, 6. Might have been 7 actually, 6 or 7 meteors. And depending on how you play, you can do, I think, 4 or 5 at a time. And you can see there's quite a few meteors that can drop when you do that. Each of these can hit multiple targets. The AoE size is pretty large. And of course, you can just choose to cover the entire screen by clicking in multiple areas. And yeah, everything gets hit with meteors. And since the meteors hit so hard, most things die from it in the first go round, and if you need to concentrate your fire on one thing, that's simple enough as well. So this is a very high DPS build. It's nice to see too, because ever since the changes to Mage, people have been pretty upset. A lot of the Mage builds have been considered to be non-viable. That is true. This one is an exception. It is still very viable. It still gives the mage an opportunity to be a part of the end game. So let's get into it with the positives and negatives of this build. So the positive is pretty obvious. The damage is super high. And it's also super high regardless of whether or not you're trying to hit AoE or whether or not you're trying to hit a single target. You just concentrate your fire on a single target. Most will die within 1 meteor. Almost everything will die within 2 meteors. And by meteors, I mean meteor run. So multiple clicks of meteors, drop them all down in the same spot. It's going to kill just about anything. And I can't think of anything that lives even 2, including bosses. So you'll kill things really quickly. Your range is extremely high as well. You can click anywhere on the map that you can see, so you can kill anything on the screen, and if you happen to know where something is off screen and you can click far enough out, you can probably hit that too. So I would venture a guess that this is probably the most rangy, has the highest range of any class in the game, any build in the game. Maybe some will tie with it, but I can't imagine anything can hit significantly farther than this can. So your range is tremendous, your damage is tremendous, the area that you can cover with your damage is tremendous. You can hit everything on your screen if you just plan it properly. By the way, I can actually drop an additional meteor if I just teleport first. It gives me a free one. You can see there the first click doesn't cost any mana, and I literally have filled the screen with meteors. So nothing goes untouched if you play it the right way. That is its biggest positives. The damage in all aspects, multi-target, single target, range, are all going to be tremendous. But it's not a perfect build as far as it does have weaknesses. For one, it's not a particularly tanky build. It's actually quite glass cannony, at least for as far as I go. I tend to not like super glass cannon builds in the current meta of LE because the current meta of LE is very punishing towards dying. So I try to make builds that can survive. but this one is on the other, it's kind of on the lower end of survivability for what I'll accept. Its benefit, though, is that it is very mobile because it can cast so quickly. It doesn't have to stand in one place very long. It can teleport out of an area should it need to. It doesn't stand in one place and take hits. So if you play this build well, you shouldn't be getting hit that often, and that is where your survivability is really going to come from. It's not going to come from the ability to take hits. It's more going to come from the ability to avoid them. The other big downside of this build is it's not super fast as far as clear speed goes. It doesn't get around the battlefield especially well. It's got a teleport on anywhere from like an 8 to 7 or 6 second cooldown. That's all it has for movement abilities. It does have to stop to cast, so it can't just keep continuously running, even though the cast is very, very quick. And since the teleport is all it has, it's going to take you a bit longer to clear monoliths than some other builds in the game that are kind of more clear speed oriented. So if you're looking for a fast clear speed build for monoliths in particular, this one's not gonna probably cut it for you. It's not bad at it by any stretch. It's still good at it. In fact, you can in the early monoliths just run to the boss and then just have everything come to you and destroy it all in one shot. It's just not going to get there quite as quickly as, say, the shield throw paladin build that I made, that was just going to just tear through a map. However, on arenas, it will clear them very quickly because it can cover so much area. It's basically can kill things just about as fast as they can get to it, assuming that your attacks land, assuming your meteors land. Which does get us to our last drawback, I guess you could say, our last negative. It's not really a negative, but this playstyle does have a bit of a skill curve. It's not super challenging, but you do have to plan out your meteor attacks. These don't hit immediately. As you click them, it takes a while for them to load up. And so they won't hit something. Let's say if you have an enemy that's running straight at you and you click where it is now, you will probably miss that enemy because the enemy will have moved from that spot by the time the meteors hit. So you do have to do some planning, at least some prediction. You might even have to do some positioning on your own to make sure that the enemies are getting hit by the meteors. A little bit different than, say, again, the shield throw where you just fire and forget. This one you actually do have to be a little bit more active with where your meteors are going in respect to where the enemies are located and where they're going to be located when they hit. Alright, so let's move on to the skill trees, starting with the active one so you can see how the build actually works, and then ending with the passive tree. So I do have 5 skills in here. They all do get used, but frankly, 3 of these skills are doing 95% of the work of the build. And that's going to be Focus, Teleport, and of course Meteor. And we'll talk about what Fire Shield and Black Hole are doing in a minute, but those ones are pretty ancillary stuff. These 3 here are going to do most of the work. So let's get into those in particular. So Focus, of course, is going to give you your mana back when you expel it very quickly with Meteor, as you will. Its primary value is in these 2 nodes, Desperate Meditation and Mana Flooded. You can see I have not capped those. As long as you're getting back mana quickly enough to where you don't have to stand there long enough to start getting hit, then you can stop putting into these nodes. But putting in 5 of 5 in Desperate Meditation certainly won't hurt your case of getting out of a place quickly. So after that, I focus on defensive things so that if I do get hit while I'm in focus, hopefully it won't kill me. So I'm taking Iron Stance, which gives me 500 armor. That's a substantial amount. I've taken Chilling Aura to chill them if they get close to me. Frankly, this one is probably more flavor, not necessary to the build. If you want to skip this for something else, that would be completely fine. And then Prismatic Stance gives me more elemental protection. And I did take Resolute Stance to give me some more health regen. Now, as far as how you build out the defensive part of Focus, you really can do this more to your play style. I think Iron Stance is extremely good. Prismatic Stance is good if you are standing in something that's elemental, but of course if it's necrotic or void or poison, it won't help you at all. So maybe you'd rather do more regen, where you can go Resolute Stance, you can go Inner Growth. There are several options here where you can go. You can go take Armor and Protections up in Prison Barrier. And all of these are okay. All of these should be acceptable depending on your playstyle and how your gear is currently laid out. As long as you have enough of these nodes to get your mana up quickly, that is really going to be the limiter on how much damage you can do in a short period of time. If you're taking a while to get your mana back, then you are not doing damage. You are standing in one place, and when you're standing in one place, you're getting hit. When you're getting hit, you might die. So this is really the bread and butter of the build, and then the defenses are secondary. All right, let's move on to teleport. Teleport is playing a dual function here. The obvious one is its movement ability. It allows you to move around the battlefield a lot more quickly and get out of things that might otherwise hit you and potentially kill you. But it's also doing work for increasing our DPS. Its primary work is being done from this node here, Mana Tunnel, which gives you a free spell after a teleport, but increases your cooldown by 6 seconds. Now, this is extremely valuable because Meteor costs 60 mana, which is a lot. And so gaining a free 60 mana by spending 17 mana is very worth it. So once we take that, though, our cooldown becomes much, much greater. We'll offset that a bit with Tunnel Finder, which decreases our cooldown recovery by, or increases our cooldown recovery speed by 20%. We've also taken in here, by the way, some Crystalline Passage for some damage mitigation, and Flicker for mana efficiency. This one's pretty good. It's always nice to get the mana as low as possible when you're trying to cast as many meteors. After that, we've gone over here and we've taken a little bit of Ether Barrier. Frankly, I'd probably take 1 point out of this if I were to do it again. It's 14 ward is really not much of anything in this build, but the goal here, well, the reason I've taken it actually is because it gets me over to Elemental Affinity, but I could have went and taken Plasma Protection instead, 1 point, 5 points here, and then saved a point. Probably would have done that. Looking back on it, probably will change this eventually and maybe take a little bit more on Tunnel Finder so I can teleport more often, or Flicker for mana efficiency. But this isn't really a big deal. The important thing is that you get Elemental Affinity, which increases your elemental damage by 50% 4 seconds after you cast this. The general goal here, if you're trying to maximize your damage, is you teleport, which gives you Mana Tunnel and gives it 50% damage, and then you can immediately start to cast. You'll get a free cast, so you'll get an additional meteor off, and of course you're doing 50% more damage during that 4-second window. So this is a really good way to increase your damage, while also giving you that additional battlefield movement and ability to get out of stuff that would potentially kill you. All right, let's get to the real star of the show, Meteor. So Meteor's getting most of its work from 2 sections of the tree. We'll start going down this right side. We take Force of Impact because we need to. It's pretty useless. It increases your stun chance. Stun's not great in the game right now, but it's there. It needs to be taken. Same thing with Rapid Ascent, although Fall Speed is not a bad thing because it decreases the amount of time you have to sort of predict that an enemy will be in an area, so it makes prediction a little bit easier, but it's not doing anything as far as your damage goes. Twin Meteors is where stuff starts to really impact your build. It adds a Meteor. So Meteor starts with 1, which is 1 meteor falls. This doubles that amount, so you get 2 meteors falling. Of course, you do less damage per meteor, but we'll take a 35% decrease to do effectively double damage otherwise with 2 meteors falling instead of 1. And then we'll take Meteor Shower, which is similar, except you actually don't lose as much damage as you would have lost with the first one. So you gain 5 meteors, lose 40% hit damage per meteor. Totally acceptable to gain 5 meteors and lose 40% per meteor. That's a huge damage bump, and that's why we see just complete battlefield annihilation when this thing hits in the right areas of the screen. All right, so that is why we have so many meteors, but why do the meteors do so much damage given that we've taken so much damage off of them? And that's where we go up this top tree. We take Extinction, which increases our base crit by 8%. 8% may not seem like much, but you start to add on critical strike chance nodes, multiplier nodes in your passive and on your gear, and you can get that up to a very high number very quickly. And this also increases the chance that you'll have a large meteor fall, which is a higher area of effect meteor, so further increasing the area that you can cover on the battlefield, so to speak, on the map. From there, we'll take all 4 of Astral Cataclysm, which gives us a critical multiplier of 120%. This is a huge multiplier. You don't usually see them nearly this large in skill trees, so it's very nice. Very nice note. That covers the primary things here. So let's really quickly just talk about what Fire Shield's doing and what Black Hole is doing. Fire Shield is just doing 2 things. If you've got it up, you've got additional elemental protection, which is nice. You got a little bit of a war generation, which honestly you can skip this and look for something else if you want to. The other thing I use this for is a box opener. Circle of Flames and Inferno Ring and Wide Emanation allows us to have a large ring around us, which does do damage. It's not completely ineffective as far as damage, but it's like 200 or so a tick. Nothing compared to what Meteor can do. It can be nice to like clean up things that are almost dead, and you just need to get a couple of these hits on them, a couple of hits from Fire Shield instead of spending time with a Meteor. But really, its big benefit to me is at the end of arena, you have your boxes and you turn on Fire Shield and Fire Shield opens all the boxes for you. That's its primary thing. Unfortunately, Mage doesn't have a lot of synergistic options like Sentinel does, and so we had to find something to put here. This is what's there. If you find something else that actually benefits the build, I would recommend going with that. But for now, Fire Shield is where it's at, and that's what we've got here. All right, Black Hole is a little bit more valuable though. Black Hole allows us to. It's basically like a you know what button. Stuff gets close and it's actually harmful, especially if, like, say you get higher in the arena or higher in the monolith. Black Hole will allow you to pull them away from you, put them in one spot, and let your meteors just fall on all of them all at once, killing them much more quickly and with much less danger to yourself. So here's what we've taken in Black Hole. Stability allows it to last longer. Intensity increases the pulse strength, so it'll pull more things and better. It'll have a stronger effect on them. And pull area increases how far away it will pull from. So these in particular are really important nodes. And then we've taken time dilation, blind chance, which really gets us to rifts, which decreases the cooldown recovery speed and the mana cost. We lose the damage, we lose some pull strength and pull area, but we definitely don't want this to cost much, but we want it to be available to us as much as possible. You could choose to bypass this if you want to get maximum pull strength, maximum pull area, but personally I'd rather have more mana efficiency so I can do more meteors. And then we took 2 in Black Hole recast chance. There's a chance that once Black Hole goes away you can get a second one. This is honestly not especially valuable. It's a nice thing to have, but 99% of the time when you cast Black Hole, you're then casting Meteor after it, and Meteor is killing everything on the screen, and so a second Black Hole isn't going to pull anything in because there's going to be nothing left alive. But there is the rare time where you had to cast a Black Hole just to get away from stuff, and you ran out of mana, and so that second one might give you a little extra time. So it's not completely useless, but again, not the important aspects of Black Hole. All right, that's the active skill trees. Let's talk about the passives. What's doing the work here? We'll start with the base. So I've taken 5 in Arcanist, and then I've taken 10 in Preparation. Arcanist gives us Intelligence and Elemental Protection. If you chose to take 5 in Elementalist, I would not blame you. That would be totally fine too. It might be a little bit more DPS. You lose a little bit of Elemental Protection, but as you've seen here, we've got Elemental Protection covered in some other areas, so not the worst thing in the world. Preparation, every 3 seconds your next spell deals 200% increased damage. I think it's pretty clear cut why we've taken this one. We don't cast Meteor constantly. We're casting it, we're positioning and then casting, positioning and then casting. So 200% increased damage is going to proc often on at least one of our Meteor casts. And then Knowledge of Destruction is a big one. Grants 70% increased critical strike chance and 30% increased critical strike multiplier. As you have seen from the Meteor skill tree, critical strike chance and multiplier are big for this build. It's kind of what we're pushing for, so this is a node that we definitely want to have. All right, into Sorcerer. We'll start with this very important one. Calculated Destruction, increase your critical strike chance by 160% with spells. Need I say more? I don't think so. Brainstorm, 56% increased spell damage. Mana Shell, we gain 40 armor and 60 mana. These are both nice stats to have. We don't have a whole lot of armor to get from our tree, so any physical damage we can mitigate is good. And then, of course, mana allows us to cast more meteors at any given time. You could definitely put more into this to get more mana. Mana is always a good thing for this build. Arcane Momentum, 25% increased cast speed if you have cast a spell in the past 2 seconds. Let me show you how this works. So again, when we cast, we tend to cast multiple meteors at once. The first cast is going to be a little slow. The following cast is going to be much quicker. That one is going to proc almost every time you cast a meteor, with the exception of when you only need to cast one and feel like it'd be a waste to cast more. But otherwise, that one's always going to improve your DPS at any given point when you need to cast meteors quickly and try to stay out of range of enemies that could hurt you. All right, Pyromancer, 48% increased fire damage. Need I say more? Afterglow, 25% increased spell damage, doubled if you have used a skill that costs at least 40 mana recently. Well, Meteor costs 60 mana, so every time we're casting Meteor, we are getting Afterglow on the secondary meteors, or secondary meteor cast, which are the majority of the meteors we're going to cast, since we can cast I think it's 3 to 5, 1, 2, 3, 4. I can cast 4 without using teleport, so 4 to 5 meteors, as long as I have a full mana bar. So the majority of them are going to gain Afterglow, an additional 25%. I've one in Lavamancer. The primary purpose of this is just to get a little bit of leech. That's really all it's doing. All right, then we go up to Crackling and Precision, increased critical strike chance. Unfortunately, we don't have a lightning skill here, but that's all right. It's still very much worth it, especially since it gets us Arcane Obliteration, another 50% critical strike multiplier with spells, on top of the other multipliers we've already added. And then we can jump all the way up here. Archmage, 50% base build damage, doubled if you have at least 200 maximum mana. This is an area that my build's actually inefficient in. I do not have 200 maximum mana right now, so I am actually losing out on 50 base spell damage. This is an area where you can definitely take advantage of, and I do recommend it. And then Recollection, 15% increased cooldown recovery speed. My next level, I will then be picking up the 4th one of this. So definitely recommend all 4 of those. Once I've done that, I will probably be moving down either into Elemental Ascendance. Increase my elemental damage. That's the primary use for this. The elemental protection is nice, but not necessary. Or Lost Knowledge, where it would be the first node that I actually can care about ward. This one is nice for this build because it's 7 ward per point put in. There's 10 points total. If you get all 10, you get 70 ward. And remember, we're casting this 4 to 5 times. So it's 70 times 4 to 5 times, so 280 or 350 ward every time you use your meteor, which will be often. And so this would be a good way to really increase your effective HP. I have not taken it here because I didn't feel the need for it, but if you want to be a little bit tankier, you want to be able to take a few more hits, this would be a good way of doing it. Alright, now let's talk about gearing your mage and trying to maximize your efficiency with crafting, with items that you're picking up. Let's begin that discussion with the offensive side. What should you get to increase your damage to its maximum capability? So there are several stats that you can prioritize here. Fire damage is always a really good one. Spell damage is especially good, especially on your wand. Make sure you get a wand with maximum base spell damage. That's your primary target. You see I have a plus 227. They've just added a new wand class, wand type. I think it's a level 70 required. I haven't picked it up yet. But that one's going to be even further, so this is going to be able to do even more damage. I'm actually excited to see what that's going to be like. Elemental damage is always a good choice as well, as elemental will affect fire, lightning, and cold. You definitely want to be looking for that. So to recap on those 3: fire, elemental, spell. Another great option is to go push towards your critical stuff. So your critical strike multiplier is always going to be a really good one to put on your gear. The higher you get that, the better. Critical strike chance is also available to you should you not have capped out yet, which you probably won't. Unless you put quite a bit on. I wouldn't recommend putting too much critical strike chance on, as you're gonna crit a lot anyway. But a little bit extra, as you can see I have it on my ring, is certainly going to help you smooth out the damage, make sure it's more consistent. So what about defenses, though? As I said, this is not a very tanky build, but you still don't want to get one shot. The first thing I recommend is getting your Glancing Blow to 100%. You see that I have not quite gotten mine there. I'm at 99%. That's something I will rectify, but definitely do that. Beyond that, your options are very open. I've pushed for a more health-based build here, but you could definitely do a ward-based version of this. There are options in teleport, there are options, I believe, in focus that can get you a lot more ward. You saw the passive tree option that we just spoke about that gets you like 240 ward uh, per group of meteors being cast. Up to like I think 360, whatever that was. That's a lot of ward, so you might want to push ward retention if you want to go that route. You might want to stress more ward type stuff. I definitely could see a version of this build working with that. If you don't go ward though, you'll definitely want to make sure you have enough health. You might want to push health regeneration, even though again I haven't here. That's always a good choice to make sure that you don't get immediately killed from the previous attack. Block chance is good. Block protection is good. Try to get that up to at least get to one of these shields here as soon as you can, where they've got high block chance, they've got high block protection and armor. Definitely going to help you survive if you can block some of the attacks. Dodge is nice. Bear in mind, block chance, dodge, glancing blow don't affect dots. So you can also see here that except for void and poison, where I've been lacking a little bit, my armor, my lightning, my cold, my fire, and my necrotic are all at least mitigating at least 26% of it. So, but again, here you have a lot of space for flexibility as far as what defenses you're going to choose. I think the only must-have is glancing blow. Right now, in every build, in my opinion, it is an absolute necessity to have glancing blow, whether you think that's good or whether you don't think it's good to have such a strong requirement for one thing. Regardless, that is if you want to avoid getting one shot, glancing blow is how you do that. It's going to cut out 50% of the damage from every attack that you take, except for dots. And so you pretty much have to have that. Another interesting choice right now is critical strike avoidance. I don't remember if I have that on this build. I think I have a little bit. Yeah, I have 22%. This is interesting because it's kind of like glancing blow in that it smooths out the top end damage you could take. So the more critical strike avoidance you have, the more times you will prevent a critical strike from occurring. It does seem like you can get this to 100%. Critical strike avoidance is pretty high on gear. Let me see if I can come up with an example. Here you go. Yeah, this is my 22% is from a belt. And let's see, is it even a tier 5? It's only a tier 4. A tier 4 belt is giving me more than 1/5 of the time I won't take a critical strike when I otherwise would. So that might be something to consider. The nice thing about this game is, other than glancing blow right now, protections are something that you can kind of put in a lot of places and it will all help. So whether or not you like that play style is so whether or not you like that kind of freedom or not, it's where we're at now. But yeah, definitely, as a general rule, here's what I always say. You have to have glancing blow, and remember that your protections, your armor protections, are the only way to prevent dots, so don't completely ignore those. You can see I'm very susceptible to void right now. This is clearly not a completely finished build, but do make sure you don't completely ignore your armor and protections and get your glancing blow. And everything else that you get is just going to make it all the more easy to survive going forward. So let's discuss one more thing on this build. That's the rotations. So if you're a person who doesn't like super complicated rotations, let me tell you, you're going to like this build, because it does not have super complicated rotations. In fact, it has very simple rotations, depending on whether or not you want to keep Fire Shield up. Should you care to keep Fire Shield up for the elemental protection and the little bit of DPS it gives you, then you will have to click this every... Doesn't actually say in here, does it? I believe it's every 10 to 12 seconds, something along those lines. So you can throw that in there, but otherwise it's pretty reactionary stuff. So teleport as needed to get to where you want, or to maximize your DPS. To start with, if you want to add additional meteor and do 50% more damage, which I do recommend. So you teleport, and then you just start left clicking, or excuse me, right clicking if that's where you have your meteor button, to hit everything that you are trying to hit. Just make sure that you're aiming properly, and that is your offensive side. Once that's over, once you've expended all of your meteors and you expended all of your mana in the process, you hold down whatever your focus button is. In this case, it's E, until you have regained all of your mana. Rinse and repeat. The only other thing to consider is whether or not you want to group up enemies or prevent them from reaching you, which in that case, maybe you teleport, maybe then you're going to black hole, and then you're going to smash everything with a meteor. And then again, focus. That is it. That is this rotation. It is a relatively simple rotation, certainly by the standards of the first two builds I've made. There's not a whole lot to consider. Maybe if you want to keep a fire shield, then your fire shield, teleport, black hole, and then meteor, and then focus would be a full rotation. But I don't think you'll find that under practical circumstances you're going to be doing all those things. The most you're going to be doing is maintaining your fire shield, teleporting when you need to, laying out your meteors, and then focus. That's it. Rinse and repeat as needed. That is your rotation. Pretty simple stuff, but very effective. Well, that's going to do it for this build guide video. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoy watching these videos, and if you would like to see more Last Epoch being played, if you'd like to see me actually design these builds, I stream about 5 days a week on Twitch, and the majority of the time I am actually designing Last Epoch builds. So please come check us out. Come hang out. I love chatting. So ask questions, whatever you'd like to talk about. I'd love to discuss it. If you enjoyed this video, please drop me a like and subscribe. I'm sure if you've been watching a lot of YouTube, you know that that's really beneficial for us, us video content providers. Also, I have a Discord if you'd like to stay up to date on my latest videos and when I go live streaming and when I'm going to be streaming. That's all on there. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great rest of your day. Enjoy your time in Last Epoch. I know I certainly will.